The fog rolls thick over the steel and concrete, masking the edges of the road. Border bridges are meant to connect two lands, to unite travelers across rivers and boundaries. But after midnight, these bridges are different. Shadows gather beneath the lights. Vehicles seem to move slower, though the engines roar. Figures appear at the edges, and sometimes they move with the cars, keeping pace no matter how fast the driver goes. Many drivers report their headlights catching nothing, only to feel cold fingers brush along their windows. Some see faces pressed against the glass, staring silently. Others hear whispers calling their names from the water below. Tonight, we cross 20 haunted border bridges where shadows follow cars, engines growl with unnatural echoes, and the past refuses to stay behind. If a figure appeared in your rearview mirror, unmoving and unblinking, would you speed ahead, or stop and stare into the darkness? Hello, my dear friend. I hope you are safe tonight, because what we are about to explore is not for the faint of heart. Border bridges carry us across rivers, into new towns, and toward destinations unknown. At night, however, some bridges hold more than asphalt and railings. They hold memories, tragedies, and restless shadows that refuse to leave. Drivers and passengers report sudden chills, headlights catching figures that vanish instantly. And the sensation of being followed even when alone. Some swear their radios switch channels on their own. Others feel hands tapping on the glass, or breathing against their necks when no one is there. These bridges are more than haunted locations. They are portals between the living and the unknown. And the shadows that linger are patient, watching every move. Before we step onto our first bridge, let me ask you this. If the shadow of a long-dead traveler began to follow your car, moving with you across the border, would you confront it, or would you keep driving and never look back? Take a deep breath, and let us cross the most haunted border bridges where shadows follow cars. Fog Veil Bridge stretches across a river cloaked in perpetual mist. The air here is heavy and damp, carrying the scent of water and moss. At any hour, visibility is reduced to only a few feet. The bridge is narrow, one lane in each direction, and the fog seems to compress the space, making the distance between guardrails feel smaller than it should. Drivers report seeing shadows alongside their vehicles. Even with high beams cutting through the thick air, these figures appear briefly, moving at impossible speeds. Some are human in shape, tall and thin, their outlines distinct, yet impossible to reach or touch. Others flicker at the edges of vision, vanishing when directly observed. They do not react to headlights or honking. They are simply there, moving in rhythm with the road, yet not bound by it. Passengers often experience sensations of touch that cannot be explained. Hands brush lightly against windows, leaving cold impressions on glass. Sometimes it is fleeting, almost like a whisper, but unmistakably tangible. Those inside the vehicles tense, searching for a source, only to find empty guardrails and fog that swirls with no discernible movement. The feeling leaves an impression long after crossing the bridge. Whispers accompany these sensations. Low, murmured voices drift inside vehicles, speaking in languages that are unrecognizable. The words are articulate, syllables coherent, yet the meaning is inaccessible. The whispers seem to come from outside the car, yet they reverberate within the cabin as if the fog itself is speaking directly to the travelers. The sound appears to respond to movement, growing louder or softer depending on speed and attention. The bridge itself seems to resist understanding. Steel and concrete remain visible, yet the fog bends light in unnatural ways, creating the illusion of depth where there is none. Road markings appear to shift slightly with perspective, making the crossing disorienting. Drivers report moments where the bridge feels longer than it should, with distant shadows appearing repeatedly before they reach the end. At night, the experience intensifies. Fog thickens, reducing visibility to near zero. Headlights illuminate only a few feet ahead, yet figures continue to appear alongside vehicles. Pacing without noise, disappearing when approached. The bridge becomes a corridor of perception, where ordinary rules of movement and distance no longer apply. Cars crossing in opposite directions sometimes see each other's vehicles emerge and disappear suddenly, as if time itself has altered. Shadows do not adhere to vehicle speed. They linger, detach, or vanish entirely, leaving no footprint or trace. Drivers describe a feeling of being followed, a sensation of presence just outside the vehicle. Pressing close without being seen. Those who attempt to leave the bridge quickly notice changes in perception. Clocks inside vehicles often misalign with actual time. Some report minutes passing without the odometer moving, or distances appearing longer than they should. The air inside cars feels denser, cooler, carrying a weight that grows with every second on the bridge. The weight that grows with every second on the bridge. Multiple accounts describe the sensation of being guided or directed. Shadows appear at points where guardrails dip or where curves tighten, drawing attention to the edges. The whispers intensify near these locations. The effect is subtle, never violent, but insistent, as if the bridge itself has a consciousness. At moments, the sound seems almost synchronized with the heartbeat of the passengers, producing a sense of shared rhythm with the unseen presence. Fogvale Bridge carries a history. Local lore speaks of travelers who vanished mid-crossing, leaving vehicles empty or abandoned at the roadside. Investigations often find no signs of struggle, no traces of the missing, only the fog thickened as if the bridge had absorbed the event. These stories reinforce the bridge's reputation, but even skeptical travelers cannot deny the strange occurrences during crossings. Even skeptical travelers cannot deny the strange occurrences during crossings. The environment contributes to the sense of otherworldliness. The river below reflects nothing but fog, erasing depth, creating the impression of endless white beneath tires. Trees along the banks loom as hazy silhouettes, their forms indistinct, yet appearing to lean closer, watching. Even the wind behaves oddly, carrying whispers without producing movement in branches or leaves. Drivers note a change in awareness when approaching the bridge. Attention narrows. Peripheral vision becomes hyperactive. Every shadow, sound, and shift in light is noted instinctively. The fog amplifies every perception, heightening sensitivity and creating a space where ordinary judgment feels inadequate. Despite the unsettling phenomena, the bridge continues to function as a roadway. Vehicles cross safely, though travelers rarely linger. The repetition of reports over decades indicates patterns. Shadows appear at similar points. Whispers follow familiar rhythms. The sensations of touch, cold, and presence recur predictably, reinforcing the impression that the bridge operates according to its own rules. Fogvale Bridge endures as a place where perception and reality collide. Shadows move independently, whispers articulate but indecipherable, hands brush where no one stands. Drivers experience altered time and space. Passengers feel observed, the fog pressing against them. At night, the bridge stretches into a corridor of unknown. Vehicles pass through, drivers alert, passengers tense. The fog thickens, shadows pace, whispers rise, and the air grows cold and insistent. Figures appear, vanish, and return in patterns that defy comprehension. The bridge remains, narrow, isolated, and shrouded. Fogvale continues to stretch across the water, carrying travelers safely yet mysteriously through its mist. A space where shadows, whispers, and sensations exist alongside the ordinary world, leaving a memory that lingers long after the crossing ends. The silver stream border crossing stretches across a slow-moving river that winds quietly between two nations. By day, the crossing appears ordinary. Travelers report a change the moment they approach the river under darkness. The surface becomes unusually smooth, like glass, reflecting the moon and headlights in sharp clarity. At first, it seems merely serene, but a subtle unease grows as one notices the reflections of passengers inside vehicles. Faces in the water appear too pale, too still, too aware. Drivers often first notice their own expressions mirrored in the river. A smile, a frown, a blink, each movement is matched precisely. But soon the reflections begin to linger, exaggerating certain movements or holding expressions a moment too long. Some travelers swear the faces move independently, mimicking emotions before the driver has had time to react. The effect is disorienting. One moment, the car feels steady. The next, the reflection seems to ripple with intent, creating a sense that the water itself watches and responds. Vehicles at a stoplight or checkpoint may appear stationary, yet reflections shift, lean, or blink in ways that cannot be explained by natural motion. Shadows along the riverbank deepen this sensation. Trees bend over the water, their forms mirrored in the dark surface. Even minor disturbances, like wind brushing the surface, produce shapes that suggest movement where none exists. Drivers report feeling eyes on them, not from the trees but from the reflection below, from the pale, mirrored faces that do not belong entirely to themselves. The river moves slowly, yet perception is altered. Distances seem compressed. The far bank appears closer than it should. The sound of flowing water is muted, replaced by a faint, indistinct hum, like distant murmurs carried across the river. Some passengers feel a pressure in their chest, as if the water presses upward, linking the reflection and the vehicle in a silent connection. Observers describe the faces as unnervingly human, yet subtly unnatural. Features are familiar, yet wrong in a way that evokes unease. The reflection may exaggerate a frown, smooth a wrinkle, or tilt a head, producing a sense of consciousness behind the water. It does not speak or gesture, but the mimicking alone creates a strong impression of awareness. Drivers who pause to examine the river often report more than simple reflection. The faces seem to follow their movements, shifting in position, tracking hands on the wheel or eyes in the rearview mirror. Even when the car is parked, the faces may rotate, blink, or change expression. The phenomenon does not respond to direct questioning. Observers can look and refocus, yet the mirrored faces continue their subtle, uncanny mimicry. Night crossings amplify the effect. Headlights produce beams across the water that enhance the clarity of the reflections, yet simultaneously distort shapes and shadow. The river seems deeper, darker, and the faces more insistent. Moonlight adds a pale glow, highlighting contours and creating the impression of multiple layers within the reflection, a depth that feels both real and impossible. Some travelers report feeling a pull, a compulsion to continue across the river even if unsure of the road. The reflection and the real world merge subtly, producing a sense that hesitation is observed and perhaps measured. The combination of stillness, movement, and mirrored awareness creates a tension that heightens attention and anxiety simultaneously. Attempts to record the phenomenon with cameras or phones often fail. Video captures the river in ordinary detail, lacking the clarity or movement described by witnesses. Audio picks up only the normal sound of the river or tires on pavement. The mismatch reinforces the subjective yet convincing nature of the experience, leaving travelers uncertain whether it is illusion, perception, or something more. Physical sensations accompany observation. Drivers and passengers report skin prickling, subtle nausea, or vertigo. The longer one observes the reflections, the more intense these sensations become. The river remains smooth, slow, and undisturbed by wind or external activity. It is as if the water itself is aware of the observer, maintaining presence without aggression. The Silver Stream border crossing continues to operate every day, yet night travelers describe it differently from daytime crossings. The river seems altered, more alive, a silent participant in the journey. Reflections mimic, shadows deepen, and perception stretches. Observers are left with a lingering sense of scrutiny, a feeling that the water knows more than it should, and that the faces it carries are never truly empty. Some drivers choose to avoid the crossing at night entirely, while others make the journey repeatedly, drawn by curiosity or obligation. Those who experience the reflections report lasting impressions. Even after leaving, they recall the pale faces, the subtle mimicry, and the sensation that observation persists long after the river is behind them. The Silver Stream border crossing is ordinary in daylight, functional and calm. At night, it becomes a liminal space. Where reflections take on an eerie independence, the river appears sentient. And travelers sense observation that challenges understanding. Every night, the river flows as it always has. Its surface mirrors the moon and headlights, yet beneath the calm, an unseen awareness seems to watch, responding with pale faces that mimic, follow, and persist. Travelers cross it, witness its subtle power, and carry the memory of observation that remains long after the journey is done. Iron Gate Crossing stretches across a deep river, its steel beams catching sunlight by day and reflecting darkness at night. During daylight, vehicles move steadily along the lanes, the railing shadows cast thin lines across concrete, and the river below flows uninterrupted. Drivers barely notice its length or height, taking the crossing as routine, predictable, and safe. At midnight, everything changes. The bridge feels longer, its span stretching beyond perception. The roadway seems to extend further than it should, shadows deepening along the rails. Shadowy figures appear along the guardrails. At first, they are subtle, peripheral shapes just beyond the edges of vision. Headlights occasionally catch eyes staring from the railings. Glints of light reflect from the darkness, momentary and unsettling. When looked at directly, the eyes vanish, leaving only shadow and steel. Drivers report a chill in the air, a sudden awareness that the bridge is not empty. The shapes are consistent yet impossible to define, maintaining distance while observing every movement. The sounds of the river below are altered at night. Water rushes with the same current, yet echoes across the beams differently. Footsteps that do not belong to any visible source echo faintly. Wind carries unusual whispers along the span, brushing against the car as if the bridge itself is breathing. The steel hums faintly under tires, a vibration that seems to synchronize with the movements of the shadowy figures. Drivers notice a change in perception. Distance becomes deceptive. The end of the bridge feels further away than it should. Headlights illuminate more road than expected, yet shadows remain dense and unyielding. Mirrors reflect fleeting shapes at angles impossible to explain. The railing appears longer, curving subtly in ways that defy the eye, exaggerating the sense of isolation. The figures are patient observers. They never approach aggressively. They do not interact directly with vehicles. They move alongside calmly, almost rhythmically, keeping pace, as if the bridge itself governs the relationship between travelers and the shadows. Drivers report a weight in the air, a constant awareness pressing without touch, sensing that each movement is noted. Some experience sudden changes in temperature. A cold draft moves along the lane, localized and sharp. Warm air from car heaters is insufficient to counteract it. Drivers feel the chill at the hands, shoulders, and neck, even when windows are fully closed. Even when windows are fully closed. The effect comes and goes without explanation, adding to the sensation that the bridge is alive, attentive, and responsive. Repeated crossings produce similar experiences. Those who drive the bridge multiple nights report the same patterns. Shadows appearing at the guardrails. Eyes flashing in the headlights. The roadway stretching and bending subtly. Echoes and hums moving in concert with vehicle speed. Instruments including GPS and radio sometimes behave erratically. Glitches coinciding with the areas where shadows are most noticeable. The bridge holds memory. It is both passage and presence, structure and observer. Travelers speak of awareness that lingers after leaving. A sensation that the Iron Gate crossing has retained knowledge of their journey. Some describe feeling that they were guided or measured, as if the shadows themselves marked the pace and duration of their travel. No physical evidence remains. Nothing blocks tires, no objects are left on the roadway, no footprints exist along the guardrails. Vehicles continue to move safely from one side to the other, yet the air remains dense with perception. Drivers who travel alone are most affected. Alone on the midnight span, headlights cutting a narrow path, the sensation of observation is intensified. Peripheral vision catches movement that disappears when directly focused on. The mind registers weight, presence, and rhythm in ways that defy ordinary explanation. The bridge functions normally by day. Sunlight removes the stretching effect, the shadows dissipate, and the span appears finite and ordinary. The river flows without interference. Drivers pass safely, unaware of the experiences that await those who cross at night. Iron Gate crossing endures as a passage and a phenomenon. Its steel beams and concrete lanes provide safe transit, yet at midnight, it becomes a landscape of perception, observation, and subtle interaction. Shadows move alongside, eyes catch headlights, and the air carries the memory of every crossing. Travelers leave the bridge altered. Some carry the sensation of being followed. Others recount fleeting glimpses of figures. All describe the stretch as longer, darker, and heavier than it should be. The bridge retains these moments, an unspoken witness to the passage of every vehicle and the perception of every driver. Iron Gate crossing remains. By day, ordinary. By night, alive with observation. Its shadows keep pace, its eyes reflect headlights, and the span itself stretches beyond comprehension, a bridge between reality and perception, guiding and recording every crossing in silence. Blackwater Border Bridge stretches across a dark river, its steel and concrete rising above the water like a sentinel. By day, it appears ordinary, vehicles crossing steadily, engines humming, tires pressing against asphalt. By night, the bridge takes on a different character. Shadows lengthen across lanes, the water beneath glows faintly, and the air carries a weight that makes the ordinary feel uncertain. Drivers report hearing creaking footsteps on empty lanes. The sound comes from no identifiable source, echoing along the bridge in rhythm with their own movement. Tires roll silently, engines purr, yet the footfalls keep pace, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, fading only when the vehicle reaches the midpoint. The sensation is unnerving, as if unseen figures are present alongside them, keeping watch from just beyond perception. Some travelers see figures in the center lanes. Cloaked and dark, they appear suddenly, their shape distinct against the dim glow of the streetlights. When approached, they vanish without trace, leaving the lanes empty and the night air unnaturally still. The phenomenon repeats sporadically, a presence that can be glimpsed but never captured or confronted. The river below reflects the moonlight, yet its surface holds an ethereal glow, pale and unsteady. It casts light across the underside of the bridge, illuminating shadows that shift independently of physical objects. The water seems alive, responding to movement above and around it. Travelers often report the glow intensifying as they pass, heightening the sense of otherworldliness that hangs over the structure. The bridge itself creaks and hums, as all bridges do, yet the sounds here are amplified in the quiet night. Engineers attribute the noises to expansion, wind, or traffic weight. But those who cross after dark find the rhythm deliberate, synchronized with the unseen presence. It is not mechanical. It is observational. The bridge feels alive, aware of each crossing. Witnesses describe a heightened awareness of space. Lane markings appear to stretch. Railings seem further away. And the shadows of support beams grow longer than expected. Even experienced drivers report a slowing of time. A sense that each moment on the bridge lasts longer than it should. Every footstep, every movement, every reflection is magnified in perception. Some attempt to record the figures. Cameras and phones capture only the ordinary bridge, asphalt, and faint river glow. Yet the memory remains vivid for those present. Audio recordings pick up the bridge's normal creaks, but never the footsteps that echo in perception. The experience exists entirely in awareness, immediate and undeniable. Occasionally, travelers feel a pressure in the chest or a subtle vibration beneath their feet. It is not forceful, not alarming, but insistent. A reminder that the bridge is more than concrete and steel. That the space carries something beyond the visible, beyond the measurable, and beyond the ordinary journey from one side to the other. Staff who monitor the bridge are aware of unusual reports. Certain lanes appear more prone to observation than others. And the river glow seems to interact with the presence. Personnel advise caution, but the bridge remains open, fully operational, and unaltered in structure. The environment surrounding Blackwater Border Bridge contributes to its eerie effect. Fog often drifts across the lanes, softening lights and altering perception. Vehicles moving into this space experience sudden contrasts in visibility, heightening attention and awareness. Shadows become difficult to gauge, reflections appear dislocated, and the river glow seems to pulse gently beneath the span. Despite the unease, the bridge is traversed nightly. Locals, travelers, and delivery drivers continue to cross, drawn by necessity, routine, or curiosity. Most report only fleeting sensations, minor glances at the river, and the faint echo of footsteps. Others experience prolonged encounters with the cloaked figures, leaving a lasting impression that colors memory and anticipation for future crossings. Even when no figures appear, the bridge maintains an atmosphere of vigilance. The faint glow on the water, the creaking timbre of the steel, the rustling of trees in the window all combine to create a space where perception is heightened, where attention is drawn to subtle movements, and where the ordinary journey feels extraordinary. Crossings become exercises in observation. Drivers notice minute changes in light and shadow, listen intently for rhythm and sound, and maintain awareness of their surroundings more acutely than elsewhere. The bridge enforces a state of presence, compelling travelers to experience it fully. Blackwater Border Bridge continues to function as infrastructure, yet it also exists as a threshold between the mundane and the unexplainable. Vehicles roll across its surface, tires humming against asphalt, engines steady. While the river glows faintly beneath. Cloaked figures appear briefly. And footsteps echo along empty lanes. Each crossing leaves a memory, a blend of observation, unease, and wonder. For those who traverse the bridge at night, the experience endures beyond the physical journey. The footsteps, the figures, and the faint glow become imprinted in awareness, shaping perception of the landscape and of the bridge itself. A passage not only over water but into an encounter with presence, reflection, and the unseen, a crossing that lingers long after the final lights of the night fade. Cursed Pines Bridge stretches across a quiet stretch of river, flanked on both sides by tall, ancient pines. Their trunks rise straight and unbroken, while branches lean over the road, forming a canopy that filters moonlight into fractured patterns. The forest presses close, and the air carries the scent of damp needles and earth, heavy with age. Travelers approaching the bridge sense a sudden narrowing of space, as if the trees themselves are leaning in to observe. Shadows move differently here. They crawl along the road in ways that do not correspond to light or the movement of objects. Headlights cast illumination, yet darkness seems to advance faster than it should, stretching across lanes and into rearview mirrors. Drivers glimpse shapes behind them that vanish when looked at directly, lingering only in the corners of vision. The bridge feels alive. Metal and concrete remain unchanged, yet the sensation of weight presses in from the surrounding forest. Drivers report a subtle but undeniable force on the accelerator. The pedal responds as if held by unseen hands, urging forward despite conscious intent. The effect is not violent, but persistent, a suggestion that speed is no longer entirely controlled by the occupant. The air is heavy and still. Wind does not move leaves, yet branches sway subtly. Mist can rise from the river below, clinging to the road and softening the edges of headlights. The combination of darkness, fog, and leaning trees creates a tunnel effect, where perspective feels altered and time seems to stretch. Shadows are everywhere. They appear in mirrors, along guardrails, and between the trees. Some move independently of passing vehicles. Others seem to linger long after headlights have swept past. Drivers report that the longer they remain on the bridge, the more the darkness seems to anticipate their movements, aligning itself with curves and dips in the road. The bridge is deceptively simple. It has no signs of unusual construction. No visible hazards or hidden obstacles. Yet every crossing carries a heightened sense of attention, a feeling that ordinary physics does not apply. Sounds are subtly distorted. Engine hums echo differently, tires grip as if over an uneven surface that cannot be seen. Travelers describe time stretching. Minutes may feel like hours. The road seems to lengthen unexpectedly. Approaching the far end of the bridge can feel distant, as if the trees and shadows are subtly bending the path. A glance backward often reveals that the entrance seems farther than it should, stretching into darkness and forest. The environment affects perception. Branches intrude into peripheral vision, creating the illusion of movement that vanishes when focused on. Shadows gather along the centerline, shifting subtly with curves in the road. Drivers report a pressure that is physical and mental. A sensation of urgency presses through the seat and the pedals, urging acceleration. Hands grip the wheel tighter, yet it is difficult to resist. Some compare it to a tide, moving the car forward gently but insistently. The effect intensifies at night, when visibility is low and forest shadows dominate perception. The bridge retains the echoes of previous travelers. Voices are sometimes reported, faint murmurs that rise from the river or forest. Often heard in mirrors or just beyond headlights, creating a sense of company without clarity. Footsteps can be imagined in the underbrush, matching the pace of vehicles crossing, as though the forest itself walks beside the travelers. Even in daylight, the bridge feels different. Shadows remain sharper than expected, and the alignment of trees makes the road feel narrower. Sunlight glints off the river below. But the sense of being observed lingers. Drivers feel the weight of history, a continuum of crossings that carries memory within the forest and the bridge. Approaching the end of the bridge brings relief and uncertainty. The trees begin to straighten. Shadows recede. The pull on the accelerator eases. Yet the sense of observation lingers, a reminder that the bridge retains its effect even after the crossing ends. Drivers often glance backward, expecting to see the shadows follow, but find only static forest and fading light. Cursed Pines Bridge transforms a simple crossing into an experience where perception is challenged. Shadows, mist, and forest conspire to distort time, space, and movement. Every vehicle passing through is subject to the subtle influence of the surrounding pines, the pressure on the accelerator, and the sense of being observed from every angle. It waits for the next traveler. Night or day, the structure remains unchanged yet dynamic in effect. Each crossing reinforces its reputation. Each vehicle a new thread in the pattern of sensation. The forest presses in. The shadows crawl. And the road bends in ways that defy expectation. Cursed Pines Bridge is both passage and presence. It challenges perception. Amplifies fear. and creates an environment where the ordinary act of driving becomes a journey into the mysterious. Shadows follow. Branches lean. And the subtle force on the accelerator reminds travelers that the bridge is not merely a road. It is a threshold, alive with observation, memory, and the weight of countless crossings through the tall pines. Mistfall Crossing stretches across a river perpetually shrouded in fog and rising mist. The water below is dark and restless, reflecting only a haze of gray and silver. The bridge itself is narrow, with rusted railings and worn asphalt, and the fog presses in from all sides, swallowing the edges and reducing visibility to mere feet. Travelers report a sense of distance stretching unnaturally, as if the crossing is longer than it should be. Passengers often describe strange lights floating in the mist. Lanterns appear suspended over the water, glowing faintly in warm amber or pale white. They drift slowly, unmoored by wind or current, moving as if guided by an unseen hand. Figures sometimes accompany the lanterns, walking toward vehicles on the bridge. They are human in outline, but their motion is unnatural, deliberate, and silent. They vanish before reaching the travelers, leaving only the lingering glow of the lanterns and a heavy stillness in the air. The fog amplifies every sound. Engines hum lower than expected. Tires hiss against damp asphalt. Footsteps echo along the bridge when no one walks. The mist seems to carry whispers. Voices rise and fade, calling names that belong to passengers or drivers. They speak in tones too low to distinguish fully, creating an intimacy that is both unsettling and compelling. Suddenly, the air can chill dramatically. Breath becomes visible in the vehicle cabin, steaming and suspended in frigid air that appears without warning. Windows fog, doors feel stiff, and a cold press settles against the skin. The temperature drop is immediate, leaving passengers tense and alert, eyes scanning the fog for shapes or movement. The cold is accompanied by an inexplicable weight, a presence that seems to press closer with the mist, leaning in without touching. Travelers often report disorientation. The bridge appears to lengthen or compress as they drive. Shadows stretch along the asphalt, detached from objects, moving in ways that defy the angle of the headlights. Even familiar vehicles on the crossing sometimes seem to appear closer or farther than expected, creating a sense that space itself bends. The lanterns maintain a subtle rhythm. They drift, pause, and vanish in patterns that are difficult to anticipate. Figures appear to walk with them, pausing momentarily as if observing the travelers. The shapes are always indistinct, flickering at the edges of vision, never fully clear. The effect produces a constant tension, an awareness that presence is near, yet unreachable. Drivers who attempt to accelerate past the figures find them receding only slightly, maintaining pace with the vehicles in the mist. The sensation creates a surreal impression of pursuit without contact. Passengers in the car often experience simultaneous auditory and tactile phenomena. Whispers rise from the fog while cold brushes against skin, creating a combined effect of observation and interaction that cannot be explained rationally. The river below adds to the atmosphere. Its surface is rarely visible, hidden beneath layers of mist that move in slow undulations. Waves lap silently against the bridge supports. Reflections of lanterns shimmer briefly, then disappear, distorted by the fog. The water seems to absorb light and sound, enhancing the isolation of the crossing. Some travelers have tried to record the phenomena. Cameras often fail, producing frames full of static or washed-out images. Audio devices pick up low-frequency hums and indistinct murmurs that vanish when examined. Equipment may stop working entirely while the phenomena are strongest, reinforcing the sense that the environment is resistant to documentation. The bridge itself feels alive to those who cross at night. The fog moves as though aware of presence, curling around vehicles. Drifting in unexpected directions, revealing shapes momentarily, then swallowing them. Railings glint in headlights. Yet shadows often detach and linger along edges. The environment is dynamic, creating a sense that the crossing is not entirely fixed in ordinary space. Despite the strangeness, Mistfall Crossing continues to function. Vehicles traverse it daily, passengers arrive safely, and the river flows relentlessly beneath. Yet for those who cross at night, the experience is unforgettable. Lanterns appear, shadows move alongside, cold air rises. And whispers speak in the fog, leaving travelers aware that the crossing is more than a simple path between points. The crossing is a threshold, a place where ordinary perception and unusual phenomena intersect. Time seems to stretch, space shifts, and presence is felt where none should exist. Every step, every mile, every passing lantern reinforces the sense that Mistfall Crossing has its own rhythm and awareness. As dawn approaches, the fog thins, and the lanterns fade into the dim light. Shadows vanish, whispers fall silent. And the air warms gradually. Travelers arrive at their destination with a sense of relief. Yet the memory persists. The chill, the illumination of the floating lights. The whispering voices, and the figures that walked beside them in the mist. Mistfall Crossing endures as a place suspended between ordinary reality and something unseen. Where fog, cold, and light converge to create an experience that cannot be easily explained. The bridge waits, the mist rises, and each night brings a new passage into the unknown. Leaving travelers with the memory of a crossing that lingers long after the fog has cleared. Deadman's span stretches across a wide, murky river, its steel girders rising like ribs above the water. The bridge has long carried travelers between distant towns, yet it is known for accidents, some fatal, dating back decades. Locals speak of it in hushed tones, warning drivers to move quickly and without distraction, though few can explain the strange stories that persist. At night, the bridge takes on a different character. Headlights cut through darkness, illuminating steel and water. Yet shadows seem thicker here, lingering where light should disperse. Drivers report a sudden heaviness in the air. A subtle tightening of focus, as though the bridge itself is aware of every vehicle that passes. The most persistent reports involve phantom wrecks. Cars appear to materialize in headlights with no warning. They are intact in shape but unnatural in detail, their edges flickering slightly. The vehicles seem frozen in time, positioned where an accident might have occurred. Drivers who encounter these visions often describe a pulse of fear, the instinct to swerve, yet the phantom cars do not move, they simply exist, demanding acknowledgement. From the wrecks, shadowy figures sometimes emerge. They are tall and dark, lacking discernible features. Their movements are deliberate yet silent. They follow the cars, maintaining distance, pacing along the roadway or standing at the edge, appearing to observe each passing vehicle. Drivers report that the figures do not interact directly but produce a sense of scrutiny, a presence that cannot be ignored. The experience is immersive. Headlights seem to stretch farther across the steel deck, revealing details of the figures and phantom vehicles that disappear the moment focus shifts. Mirrors reflect what appears behind the car, yet the images often vanish when glanced at directly. There is no sound beyond the engine and the wind, yet the pressure of observation feels tangible. Travelers note that time behaves oddly on the bridge. Distances seem longer, and the duration of the crossing stretches. Lights from approaching vehicles appear and vanish more slowly. Shadows lengthen unnaturally. The road feels both narrower and wider than it should. Some report the sensation of the bridge itself guiding them, holding attention forward while subtly distorting perception. Footsteps, sometimes faint, are reported along the bridge in areas where no pedestrian could exist. Mirrors and windows occasionally reflect figures inside the wrecks. Shadows that shift when looked at directly, creating a sense that reality itself bends along this span. And stop abruptly when the vehicle approaches. The phantom accidents appear most often in the darkest sections of the bridge, where lights are sparse and the water below absorbs any reflected glow. Some have attempted to capture the phenomena with cameras or video recorders. Footage rarely shows anything unusual. Static, faint distortions, or flickers may appear. Yet the figures and wrecks described by drivers do not manifest clearly. The discrepancy between subjective experience and recorded evidence contributes to the enduring mystery of Deadman's Span. Vehicles following the phantom cars report changes in speed and orientation. The figures maintain position relative to the moving car, yet no path or vehicle is visible behind them. This persistence creates a sense of guidance or stalking, a psychological pressure that intensifies until the car reaches the end of the bridge. Drivers often feel relief upon leaving, though the memory of observation lingers. The bridge's history reinforces the effect. Tales of crashes and fatalities are numerous. Some confirmed by records, others preserved only in anecdote. Travelers unfamiliar with these accounts often experience heightened anxiety, while locals approach with a blend of caution and respect. Fully aware that the bridge has a reputation extending beyond practical danger. Shadowy figures sometimes appear near the railings or along the edges of the bridge, their silhouettes elongated by headlights or moonlight. They move silently, maintaining attention on passing vehicles. Observers rarely report overtly threatening behavior. The impression is one of watchfulness, a persistence that cannot be ignored, producing heightened awareness and focus from drivers navigating the span. Night crossings amplify these effects. Darkness conceals the water below. Reflections on wet steel or occasional puddles create double images. Drivers often describe a sensation of stretching, as if the bridge is both longer and more immediate at the same time. Despite the unsettling phenomena, the bridge remains in use. Emergency and maintenance vehicles traverse the span without apparent incident. The experience appears tied to perception and awareness rather than direct interaction. Travelers who pass through slowly or attentively may notice subtle anomalies more vividly than those crossing quickly. When vehicles leave Deadman's Span, the memory remains vivid. Drivers recount the phantom wrecks, the watching figures, and the sensation of time stretching unnaturally. Many carry a heightened alertness afterward, a lingering sense that the bridge retains memory, attention, and perhaps a presence that exists beyond explanation. Deadman's Span endures as a place of observation and subtle disorientation. Phantom wrecks appear, shadows follow, and the slow river below reflects darkness without explanation. Vehicles continue to traverse the bridge each night. But the stories persist, warning travelers that this span is more than steel and concrete. It is a corridor where perception, history, and observation converge, leaving every driver aware that the crossing is never truly empty. Twilight Border Crossing lies at the edge of a wide river, where the sun sinks low and the water stretches into shadows. By day, the crossing appears ordinary. Vehicles queue at the gate, inspectors move methodically, and the river reflects the sky in calm, predictable patterns. Yet as evening approaches, the scene changes, and the familiar becomes strange. Shades of violet, orange, and deep red swirl along the surface, forming patterns that shift unnaturally with the fading light. Silhouettes begin to appear. At first, they are vague, almost blending with shadows along the shore. But as the sun dips lower, distinct shapes emerge. Figures stand or move along the riverbank, maintaining distance but visible enough to capture attention. Their outlines are humanoid, yet proportions sometimes seem distorted, limbs longer or positions impossible. The shapes continue after night falls. Headlights illuminate the road, yet the silhouettes remain on the riverbank, faintly outlined against the water. When approached directly, the forms remain, persistent yet unresponsive. Soft, indistinct murmurs rise in the car, carried over the hum of the engine and the wind outside. The voices are faint but insistent, urging drivers to stop, to pause, or to look elsewhere. No source is visible. No one is near enough to produce sound. Yet the whispering feels deliberate, synchronized with the movement of the silhouettes outside. The crossing feels longer at twilight. Distances stretch and contract in ways that defy perception. The river appears wider, the shoreline farther than expected. Headlights illuminate the road, but shadows bend around curves unnaturally. Travelers describe a sensation of suspended time, as if the crossing exists partially outside ordinary reality. Reflections in the water add to the disorientation. Figures appear mirrored in the river, sometimes slightly ahead, sometimes behind their supposed position. Reflections do not always match movement, as if the water contains its own layer of perception. Ripples distort shapes further, yet the presence is undeniable. The border station itself feels altered. Lights flicker intermittently. Barriers seem slower to rise or lower. Signs are illuminated in uneven brightness, casting patches of shadows that appear to stretch toward approaching vehicles. Travelers note a faint vibration in the pavement, subtle but persistent, like the rhythm of movement beneath the surface. The effect is cumulative. The longer vehicles remain in the crossing, the more intense the awareness becomes. Shadows seem closer. Whispers grow more insistent. Reflection shapes multiply. The air feels heavier, carrying a sense of attention from unseen observers along the shore and over the water. Even those familiar with the route feel unsettled. Regular commuters describe the same phenomena: colors that seem wrong, silhouettes at impossible distances, whispers urging caution, and the sense of eyes upon them. They report that the crossing at twilight has a distinct character, different from day or deep night. Cameras and phone recordings capture the ordinary: water, road, guardrails. Yet the whispers do not record clearly. The silhouettes sometimes appear faintly, blurred or flickering in ways that defy conventional explanation. Instruments measuring light, sound, or temperature sometimes fluctuate without cause, reinforcing the sensation that the environment is aware. The river seems to hold memory. It reflects not only light but presence. Shadows move in accordance with those who traverse the road. Whispers follow vehicles, fading only after passage. The crossing itself appears to retain echoes of previous travelers. Even with attention focused on the road and routine, the mind registers movement at the edges of vision. The whispering persists subtly, like wind through the trees, always coaxing, never violent. Headlights occasionally catch eyes staring from the shore or from reflections in the water, then vanish when examined directly. The crossing is a threshold. Twilight marks a transition between ordinary day and night, between perception and uncertainty. The river and its shores transform subtly but distinctly, creating a space where natural laws seem altered. Travelers feel observed and measured, with the crossing itself acting as both path and witness. By deep night, the phenomenon gradually fades. The colors dissipate. The silhouettes recede into shadow. Whispers diminish to a memory carried in the mind. Reflection patterns in the water settle into ordinary ripples. Vehicles reach the end of the crossing, and the routine of the border station resumes without interruption. Yet the memory persists. Those who have crossed at twilight recall the shapes, the colors, the whispers, and the altered perception of distance and time. The river retains the echo of observation, and travelers carry the experience with them long after reaching solid ground. Twilight border crossing endures as a place between day and night, reality and perception. Drivers witness colors that seem impossible, shapes that persist, and whispers that urge caution. Passengers feel attention pressing gently, insistently, and the river reflects more than light. The crossing is ordinary by day, silent at night, yet at twilight, it becomes alive, aware, and unforgettable. Ravencliff Bridge rises high over a winding river, its steel supports cutting sharply against the night sky. By day, it is a familiar route, vehicles crossing steadily, tires humming on asphalt, crows scattered along the edges of nearby trees. By night, the bridge transforms into a space that feels alive, where shadows gather, and the ordinary rules of perception begin to bend. Crows assemble along the railing after dark, their black feathers gleaming faintly in the glow of streetlights. They perch silently, wings tucked, heads turning with precise awareness. Drivers passing beneath or alongside them report an eerie stillness, as if the birds are observing more than the movement of vehicles. They wait, patient and immobile, forming a boundary between the asphalt and the darkness beyond. Between the birds, figures appear. They are human-shaped but indistinct, sometimes shadowy, sometimes clearer, standing or shifting in ways that mimic the passenger's movements. When a driver moves left, a figure shifts similarly. When a hand rests on the steering wheel, another hand rises briefly in the distance. Approaching these shapes results in nothing. They vanish as if they were never present, leaving only the faint echo of movement in the mind. Inside the cars, additional anomalies occur. Some drivers report the sound of wings flapping, soft and urgent, yet the windows are closed, the vehicle sealed. The noise has no identifiable source. It moves around the interior, circling briefly before fading. The sensation is accompanied by a subtle pressure in the chest and a heightened awareness of the environment outside the car. Many describe a sharp instinct to continue driving, to cross the bridge and leave the observation behind. The bridge itself is unchanged. Its steel beams hum with normal vibration, lights illuminate the lanes, and vehicles pass safely every night. Yet the combination of birds, figures, and sounds creates a layered perception that ordinary physics cannot explain. Shadows shift differently, reflections in windows seem delayed or duplicated. And the Krause movement appears coordinated with the unseen figures. Witnesses speak of a rhythm. The crows take flight occasionally, sweeping in synchrony with distant wings that are never seen. The figures appear and vanish in pulses, coinciding with changes in light or subtle shifts in air. Even the smallest movementa, a head turning, a hand moving, carry significance. Those crossing the bridge report being drawn into observation, caught between noticing the phenomena and the urgency to move forward. Local residents have long been aware of the occurrences. They advise travelers to stay in their lanes, to keep windows closed, and to maintain forward motion. Housekeeping and maintenance personnel report seeing the figures in reflection, as shadows across glass or metal. Attempts to approach or photograph them yield no results. Cameras capture only the ordinary bridge, asphalt, and dark river below. Audio devices record only the usual hum of engines and the occasional crow call. The phenomenon is concentrated at night, especially in deep darkness and in the absence of wind or traffic. Drivers report that the bird's silence amplifies awareness, heightening the effect of figures appearing and disappearing. Even a brief pause is sufficient to feel the presence pressing at the edges of perception. The river beneath adds to the atmosphere. Its surface reflects faint glimmers of light from the bridge, ripples that move slowly against the current, and shadows that are difficult to attribute. As if the bridge and its surroundings are participating in a performance beyond the ordinary. Observers describe a compounding effect. The combination of crows, figures, reflections, and sounds creates an environment that is immersive. Drivers feel simultaneously watched and mirrored, each action noted, each turn of the head accompanied by subtle imitation. The experience induces a state of heightened focus, tension, and awareness that persists long after leaving the bridge. People who cross frequently at night report learning patterns. Certain points along the bridge are more active. Figures appear closer to the center lanes, crows shift along the railing, and the sound of wings intensifies near mid-span. Observers move cautiously, aware that stillness invites interaction with these phenomena, while continued motion allows safe passage. Even when no figures are present, the crows maintain their silent vigil. Shadows and reflections shift imperceptibly. Drivers feel the weight of expectation, an anticipation that cannot be measured but is unmistakable. The bridge becomes a space where ordinary travel intersects with perception, observation, and unseen life. Ravencliff Bridge endures, providing passage over the river while preserving the mysteries that surround it. Vehicles continue to cross, drivers adjust to the rhythm, and the crows remain perched, silent and watchful. Figures appear briefly, shadows mimic movement, and wings flap without origin, creating a lasting impression on all who pass. The experience is remembered. It lingers in thought, shaping the memory of the journey. Travelers speak quietly among themselves, sharing stories of shadows, reflection, and sensation, never fully explaining what they have encountered. The bridge functions normally, yet exists simultaneously as a threshold between the familiar and the unexplainable, where observation, perception, and mystery converge into a single passage across darkness. Where observation, perception, and mystery converge into a single passage across darkness. Ravencliff Bridge continues to cast its presence over the river at night. Crows gather, figures appear and vanish, and drivers experience phenomena that defy ordinary understanding. Each crossing is both routine and extraordinary, a reminder that some places are shaped not only by steel and asphalt, but by awareness, perception, and the unseen forces that inhabit the space between. Silent River Crossing spans a quiet stretch of water where the current moves with an unnatural softness, almost too quietly. The bridge above is narrow and unassuming, flanked by trees whose branches bend toward the river, creating dark corridors on either side. Drivers approaching notice the stillness immediately. The air feels heavier, the usual hum of engines and tires muted by the calm that surrounds the water. The river flows beneath, steady and smooth, reflecting moonlight and headlights with a mirror-like surface. Yet the sound one expects from running water is almost absent, replaced by a faint, continuous whisper that seems carried from beneath. The river does not rush, ripple, or disturb itself. Its quietness is deliberate, unsettling, and complete. Travelers report the first sensation as unease. A glance toward the water often reveals motion that is not natural. Ripples appear where none should exist. Reflections are distorted, bending in subtle ways that hint at something moving beneath the surface. The faint echo of water against banks is accompanied by sounds that resemble cries, faint at first, almost inaudible above the vehicle's engine. These cries intensify for those who pause. Drivers who slow or stop describe the echoes as carrying weight, as if the river remembers voices from long ago. The sound is not distinct, but it resonates deeply, unsettling both mind and body. The effect is most pronounced at night, when the bridge is empty and the surrounding forest amplifies every sound. They flit across the water, sometimes curling around pilings or reflecting on the underside of the bridge. Occasionally, the shapes take on features, briefly resembling faces of past travelers. These faces are indistinct, forming for a heartbeat, then disappearing as if the river itself releases them back into the stillness. The air feels charged with memory. Wind carries no scent, yet the environment hums with the weight of what has passed. Bridges and banks hold echoes of crossings long ago, of footsteps that never reached the opposite shore. Every vehicle that passes seems to stir the past slightly, waking the Rivera's hidden awareness. The sensation of being observed is common. Drivers notice glimpses from the corners of their eyes, the impression of movement along the bridge or at the Rivera's edge. Shadows shift unnaturally, aligning with the motion of the car. Rear-view mirrors sometimes reflect shapes that vanish when looked at directly. The mind struggles to reconcile what is seen with the empty road and calm water beyond. Minutes stretch and compress. A short span of travel feels long. The reflection of trees, pilings, and river surface appears to lag behind or shift independently from movement. Drivers report that stopping for even a moment heightens the sense of dislocation, as if the river is both still and moving simultaneously. The bridge amplifies the sensation. Metal and concrete carry echoes of sound farther than expected. Floorboards hum softly beneath tires, and small vibrations in the rails mimic footsteps. Lights along the span sometimes flicker, shadows twisting, creating fleeting images that vanish almost immediately. The river preserves a history. Every crossing contributes to a cumulative presence. The still water remembers the voices, the steps, and the fleeting faces. Those who pass through become part of that memory, joining a rhythm that is both subtle and persistent. Drivers describe the air as heavier near the midpoint. It presses against the body, creating a sensation of movement not entirely under control. The vehicle feels guided along the centerline of the bridge, as if the river beneath exerts influence. Tires maintain contact effortlessly, yet the mind senses a pressure urging forward, subtle but persistent. The cries from the water sometimes intensify as headlights sweep across the surface. The river seems to respond to illumination, faint ripples forming in reaction. Faces appear briefly, formed from shadow and reflection, then vanish, leaving drivers with the impression that they have witnessed both a memory and a warning. Crossing the bridge is both passage and observation. Each journey feels like an intersection of present and past, ordinary and inexplicable. The river flows quietly beneath, holding echoes of all who have passed before. Shadows dance across the water, faces emerge and fade, and cries ripple along the quiet current. Arrival at the far side brings relief. The headlights reach open land, the reflections and shadows vanish, and the air seems lighter. Yet the memory persists. Drivers feel the weight of the river, the echoes of cries, and the fleeting faces long after leaving the bridge. Silent river crossing endures as a threshold. It is a place where water remembers, where shadows and reflections carry traces of travelers past. And where time stretches and contracts with each vehicle that passes. Drivers who cross know that the river flows quietly beneath. But it is never truly still. And that the bridge itself holds both observation and memory. Silently waiting for the next crossing. Iron Veil span stretches across the river like a steel skeleton, its trusses arching high above the lanes. Vehicles cross in both directions, but the bridge carries more than traffic. Even on calm nights, the steel beams groan. The sound is deep and resonant, echoing along the length of the span. It is not wind or temperature shifts. It is the structure itself, alive in its rhythm, a low murmur that travelers feel in the chest and through the tires on the asphalt. Drivers and passengers alike report noticing shadows in the trusses above. At first, they are subtle, appearing at the edges of headlights or just beyond peripheral vision. They are upright, human-like in outline, yet move in ways that defy balance. They do not step or climb but seem suspended, pacing the beams as though watching the vehicles below. When observers attempt to focus on them, the figures vanish, leaving only the steel lattice in its cold, geometric clarity. Radios inside cars behave unpredictably while crossing. Static bursts without cause, filling the cabin with sharp, crackling noise. Then, faint whispers rise above the interference. The voices call names, precise and intimate, as if the bridge recognizes each passenger individually. The whispers are neither loud nor threatening, but they are unmistakable. Listeners strain to understand the words, only to find them fleeting and incomprehensible beyond recognition. The sensation is amplified at night. Headlights illuminate the trusses partially, casting long shadows across lanes. The beams appear to stretch and warp, creating angles that do not correspond to the bridge's actual structure. Some observers describe the illusion of the figures moving closer as the vehicle advances, only to retreat or vanish entirely when the driver slows or focuses. The experience produces an eerie sense of being observed from above, a presence that is deliberate yet intangible. Passengers sometimes feel a subtle pressure in the air, a chill that rises abruptly within the vehicle. The temperature can drop without warning, making breath visible even in warm interiors. Hands resting on doors or steering wheels feel inexplicably cold. The effect is brief but memorable, accompanied by the low, metallic groan of the structure and the intermittent static in the radio. The Bridge's architecture contributes to the phenomenon. Steel beams intersect in complex patterns that create repeating shadows and optical illusions. The repetition of angles, the gaps between trusses, and the height above the water amplify peripheral perception. Distances feel altered, and the figures above seem unaffected by ordinary measurement. Drivers report moments where the road seems to stretch, lanes narrowing or widening unnaturally. Distances feel altered, and the figures above seem unaffected by ordinary measurement. Many travelers recount sensations of movement beyond what can be seen. Shadows twist in corners of vision. Light reflecting off steel produces patterns that suggest motion where none exists. The sound of groaning steel can shift in pitch and intensity, giving the impression of approach or withdrawal. It is difficult to separate auditory cues from visual perception, creating a layered experience that is disorienting and immersive. Observers who pause on the bridge or stop in vehicles often describe the figures remaining suspended, waiting, as if aware of being observed. They do not gesture or interact directly, yet the awareness is palpable. The whispers continue, drifting through the cabin, sometimes in languages familiar, sometimes in sounds that defy comprehension. The effect is persistent, a combination of visual, auditory, and tactile input that is unmistakable yet untraceable. The bridge carries history in its construction. Generations of engineers and workers have crossed it. Legends claim that events long past leave echoes within the structure. Some theorize that the trusses retain a memory of presence, vibrating subtly in response to weight movement or human attention. The figures may be manifestations of this memory appearing in intervals determined by the bridge itself, rather than natural law. Acceleration, braking, and steering feel exaggerated. The combination of shadows, whispers, and steel groans produces a heightened awareness. Blurred shapes appear in trusses where none were observed directly. Audio recordings capture static bursts and indistinct murmurs, but the source is impossible to locate, reinforcing the perception that the bridge resists external documentation. Despite the unsettling phenomena, Iron Vale Span continues to function as a thoroughfare. Cars and trucks cross daily, staff maintain inspections, and the structure endures against wind, weather, and time. The experience is unforgettable for those traveling after dark. The steel groans, shadows pace the trusses. Radios fill with static, and whispers call names with uncanny precision. Iron Vale Span endures as a bridge suspended between ordinary and extraordinary. Figures walk above without support. Voices speak through static. Cold touches appear unexpectedly. And perception bends. The bridge waits for each crossing, observing without judgment, shaping the experience of travelers, and leaving them with the memory of something alive within the steel. Moonshadow Bridge stretches across a wide, quiet river, its steel frame illuminated by a low, silvery moon. The glow is deceptive. While the deck and guardrails are bathed in light, shadows cling to the structure with a density that seems unnatural. They remain dark and impenetrable, absorbing the moonlight rather than reflecting it. Travelers often notice the contrast immediately, the bridge appearing both familiar and subtly alien at the same time. Cars approaching the span in darkness report an uneasy sensation the moment headlights cut across the road. The shadows along the bridge seem to move independently, lengthening, stretching, and occasionally twisting against expectation. Drivers instinctively glance in mirrors, only to find figures behind them, standing or pacing alongside the vehicle. Yet when they look directly, no one is there. The reflections persist, tied to the vehicle's movement, always present in mirrors or windows. The effect is disorienting. Footsteps are often heard alongside the car, a steady, deliberate pace matching the speed of travel. Sometimes they fall ahead, other times behind, always synchronized with the tires on steel grates. Shadows along the guardrails and trusses appear thicker than natural. Moonlight does not penetrate them evenly, leaving sections of the bridge unnaturally dark. Drivers describe the feeling of passing through a tunnel of both light and impossibly deep darkness. The air feels heavier, subtle but noticeable, as if pressing gently against the body and heightening awareness of every detail. The reflection of figures in mirrors is the most persistent phenomenon. Shapes appear human, vaguely outlined, often standing still or pacing slowly. They do not gesture or speak, yet their presence is unmistakable. The longer a vehicle remains on the bridge, the clearer the figures become, yet they vanish the instant the observer turns to confront them directly. Some travelers report that the shadows appear to anticipate their actions. Steering adjustments, braking, or acceleration may provoke subtle shifts in reflection. A figure may lean slightly, tilt its head, or step into alignment with the car. The effect produces a heightened sense of scrutiny, as though the bridge itself is aware of every motion. As though the bridge itself is aware of every motion. As though the bridge itself is aware of every motion. The shadows appear to anticipate their actions. Footsteps are accompanied by subtle auditory distortions. The hum of tires against steel grating sometimes seems to echo in patterns, forming rhythms that do not match the car's speed. Wind gusts carry faint, indistinct murmurs, as if voices are hidden within the ambient noise. Moonshadow Bridge also alters perception of distance and time. Sections of the deck appear longer than they are, or curves seem to extend unnaturally. Vehicles often feel slower, as if the bridge stretches beneath the tires. Observers report moments of dizziness, a sense that the bridge itself is bending reality, forcing heightened attention and caution. The shadows and figures respond differently depending on behavior. Rapid movement or panic driving amplifies the sensation of presence. Slower, deliberate motion produces subtler effects, yet the figures remain in mirrors, pacing with quiet persistence. Travelers describe an unshakable awareness, the sense that they are being tracked without physical threat. Lights from the moon enhance the effect. Silvery beams illuminate certain trusses and guardrails while leaving others unnaturally dark. Reflections shimmer in unexpected ways, and the bridge seems to fold space subtly, exaggerating distances and shadow depth. Drivers feel compelled to focus constantly, unsure whether perception is being manipulated or simply misled by darkness and light. Attempts to record the figures or footsteps with cameras often fail. Video captures show only blurred light, shadow, or reflections of ordinary bridge structures. Audio equipment records ambient sounds, hums, and occasional tire vibrations, but not the distinct footsteps or pacing that travelers report. The discrepancy reinforces the subjective nature of the experience while leaving it compelling and undeniable to those who witness it. The bridge is not hostile. No one has been harmed physically by the figures or shadows. The environment manipulates perception, amplifying the ordinary into something extraordinary, guiding attention without threatening life. Mirrors are checked obsessively, shadows are imagined in peripheral vision, and footsteps are sometimes recalled even after miles of open road. Moonshadow Bridge continues its nightly rhythm, carrying travelers across the river. Daytime crossings appear mundane, ordinary steel and asphalt stretching over water. Night transforms the span into a liminal space, where shadows thicken, figures appear in mirrors, and every step feels observed. The bridge endures as a place of subtle observation, where moonlight illuminates but cannot dispel the unnatural darkness, where reflections mimic and pace travelers, and where perception itself becomes part of the journey. Cars continue to cross. But those who pass at night leave forever aware that the shadows watching from moonlit angles remain long after the lights fade. Hollow Creek Crossing lies along a narrow country road, where dense trees close in on either side and the creek below winds silently through the shadows. By day, the crossing appears ordinary. Vehicles move steadily across the span. The water flows calmly beneath. Sunlight glints off the surface, and drivers pass without pause, unaware of the experiences that await after dark. As night falls, the atmosphere shifts. The creek begins to glow faintly, a red hue seeping across the water as if the current itself carries light. Shadowy forms appear along the lanes. At first, they are subtle, flickers of darkness at the edges of vision. As vehicles move forward, the shapes become clearer, walking slowly along the road or standing near the tree line. They do not step into the vehicle's path, yet they keep pace, moving in ways that feel deliberate. When drivers attempt to approach or focus directly on the figures, they vanish, leaving nothing but the empty road and the soft red glow of the creek. A chill follows travelers. Drivers report feeling cold hands brush their own on the steering wheel, sudden and fleeting. The sensation is real enough to startle, yet no one is present in the vehicle. Passengers may feel a pressure on arms or shoulders, subtle but insistent, as if the road itself is aware of their presence. The red glow seems to pulse with movement. Ripples travel across the creek, tracing patterns that do not correspond to wind or current. Trees along the banks cast shadows that shift independently of light sources. The combination of color, shadow, and subtle movement creates a sensation of watching, of attention focused on those crossing the span. Sounds are altered along the crossing. The wind seems to carry faint echoes of footsteps along the tree line, synchronized with shadowy figures outside. Vehicles hum differently, the tires on asphalt producing a vibration that is felt more than heard. Occasionally, a soft splash emerges from the creek, but no stone or object appears to have caused it. The night is alive with subtle cues that heighten awareness and tension. Drivers often experience distorted perception. The bridge appears longer than in daylight, the lanes stretching unnaturally. Distances between trees seem altered. Headlights catch reflections that do not align with the road or water. The mind registers movement where none occurs, and travelers feel as if the crossing itself is monitoring their passage. Some passengers report audible whispers. Soft, almost indecipherable, the voices rise in cadence with the vehicle's movement. The voices urge pause, careful attention, or caution. No source is visible. No one is near. Yet the effect is unmistakable. Adding to the unease of the glowing creek, the vanishing shadows, and the chilling touch on steering wheels. Attempts to document the phenomena yield inconsistent results. Cameras often capture the road, the bridge, and the creek, yet the red glow fluctuates or disappears in recordings. Audio devices record only faint hums or distorted static where whispers were heard. Attempts to measure temperature show brief drops in localized areas inside vehicles, reinforcing the feeling of sudden cold without identifiable cause. The experience is cumulative. Travelers who cross multiple nights report similar sensations each time: the red-lit water, shadows along the lanes, cold touches on arms or steering, whispers carried on the wind. Even those who are skeptical at first acknowledge the consistency of the events. Dense trees on either side close in as vehicles approach, obscuring sight lines. Wind carries sound oddly, rustling leaves and branches in patterns that do not match vehicle movement. Darkness deepens quickly, swallowing the far ends of the creek and roadway. The combination of confined space and visual cues heightens perception, creating a palpable tension that builds with every step across the crossing. Some travelers leave shaken. They awaken mid-journey, feeling touches or sensing presence. Screams or startled exclamations pierce the quiet, though no one witnesses the source. Despite fear, Hollow Creek Crossing endures. Vehicles continue to move across the bridge. Travelers come and go. The creek flows, the shadows appear, and the red light remains, shifting with the natural ebb of water and moonlight. Each crossing leaves subtle traces on memory, perception, and the body, lingering beyond the span of the bridge itself. The crossing functions in ordinary terms. Traffic proceeds safely. No accidents or blockages occur. Yet the combination of glowing water, vanishing forms, chilling touches, and whispered warnings ensures that no passage feels entirely ordinary after dark. Hollow Creek Crossing exists as both route and presence. Its waters glow, shadows walk alongside, and the road carries memory of each traveler. Drivers and passengers leave the span aware that the creek, the forest, and the bridge itself are attentive, recording, and persistent in ways that defy explanation. The red glow fades slowly as vehicles leave. Shadows retreat into the treeline. Whispers cease. The chilling touch disappears. Yet the experience remains, etched in memory. A reminder that Hollow Creek Crossing is not merely a bridge over water, but a threshold where perception, presence, and the unknown converge. Waiting for every traveler who ventures across after nightfall. Deadwood span stretches across a deep valley, flanked on either side by ancient trees whose trunks rise like silent sentinels into the night sky. Their roots grip the earth tightly, and their branches twist above the road, forming a canopy that softens the light of passing headlights. By day, the bridge is ordinary, a simple route across the valley, but at night it becomes something entirely different, alive with presence and shadow. Passengers driving across the span describe the sensation immediately upon entering the tree line. The air grows heavier, cooler, and filled with a quiet intensity that cannot be measured. The trees themselves seem aware, their bark textured and dark, their limbs shifting imperceptibly, as though observing every vehicle that passes. Shadows appear between the trunks. They are vaguely human-shaped, taller than children, smaller than fully grown adults. Indistinct yet undeniably present. These figures move silently, following cars along the bridge without crossing the lanes. Keeping distance but mirroring the progress of the vehicles. They do not approach when headlights sweep across them. And they vanish without trace when the driver slows or stops. Their presence is immediate and compelling, pressing awareness to the edge of perception. Inside the cars, passengers hear whispers. At first, the sounds are soft, almost indistinguishable from the rustle of leaves or the hum of the tires on asphalt. Then the words become clear, articulate, and unnervingly specific, speaking aloud fears the listener may have held unspoken. They echo softly, moving around the cabin, never originating from a visible source. The effect is disorienting, a sense of being both observed and exposed at the same time. Drivers and passengers alike report a growing tension. Even experienced travelers feel an unfamiliar alertness, noticing details previously ignored, the way branches sway independently of the wind, the way shadows seem longer or to stretch unnaturally, the reflections inside mirrors that show shapes shifting behind the car without anyone present. Every sound, every movement, every shift in light is magnified. The bridge itself is unchanged. Its structure is solid, asphalt even, guardrails firmly in place. Streetlights cast their normal glow, but the shadows between the trees respond differently. Light seems absorbed in certain areas, deflected in others. The roadway becomes a corridor not merely of travel, but of observation. Travelers report that the experience intensifies with each passing vehicle, as if the bridge grows more aware when it is occupied. Animals avoid the span at night. Birds do not call from the trees. And nocturnal creatures skirt the edges. The absence of life amplifies the presence of shadows and whispers, creating a heightened awareness for those who cross. Even insects seem sparse, leaving the air unusually still. Witnesses often describe the shadow's behavior as deliberate. When a passenger moves their head or shifts position, the forms appear to adjust subtly, maintaining a parallel alignment with the car. They are patient, never rushing, always present, yet incapable of being approached. Attempting to record them with cameras or phones yields only empty space. Footage captures the ordinary bridge, headlights, and dark forest, but nothing more. The experience exists entirely in perception. The whispers remain unpredictable. They come at different points along the span, sometimes early, sometimes near the midpoint. Sometimes early, sometimes near the midpoint. The content is always personalized, never repeating, describing fears with unsettling accuracy. Listeners report a tightening of the chest, a slow awareness pressing at the mind, and a compulsion to continue forward rather than pause or question. The effect of Deadwood span is cumulative. The longer one remains beneath the ancient trees, the more pronounced the awareness of unseen observation. Time seems to stretch, minutes becoming elongated, as if the bridge itself bends perception. Despite the unease, travelers return. The bridge is an essential route, and curiosity draws some to cross at night intentionally. They report the same sensations each time, a mixture of apprehension and fascination. Every crossing leaves a vivid memory, an imprint of shadow, whisper, and the oppressive calm of the forested corridor. Staff who monitor the area note these reports without alteration. They maintain the road and lighting, yet acknowledge patterns described by drivers. Lanes with heavier shadow density, tree clusters that seem more active, and recurring descriptions of personalized whispers are consistently mentioned. The phenomena remain unexplained, persistent, and consistent over time. Deadwood span continues to function as infrastructure, yet it exists simultaneously as a space beyond ordinary perception. Each night, shadows gather, whispers describe fears, and the presence of the trees seems magnified. Drivers experience heightened awareness, a parallel observation by the unseen, and a tension that lingers long after leaving the bridge. And the presence of the trees seems magnified. The bridge is both ordinary and extraordinary. Vehicles cross safely, passengers arrive at their destinations. Yet each journey is transformed. Shadows shift, whispers echo, and awareness of the forested boundary persists. Deadwood span endures as a threshold between the familiar and the inexplicable. A corridor where perception and reality intersect, leaving every traveler forever conscious of the silent watchers among the ancient trees. Ghostlight crossing stretches across a river shrouded in darkness, where the edges of the bridge are barely visible under dim, flickering lights. The span is narrow, the water below smooth and black, reflecting nothing but brief flashes of illumination. Drivers approaching the bridge notice the lights first, uneven and wavering, as if struggling against the night. At the center of the bridge, a single figure sometimes appears. It stands motionless, the outline pale against the shadows. At first, it seems distant, fixed in place by some illusion of perspective. As headlights sweep closer, the figure remains still, neither advancing nor retreating. Its presence is unmistakable, yet it feels unreal, as if the air itself holds the shape in place. When attempting to focus on it, the mind perceives movement along the bridge that is inconsistent with the laws of space. It may be seen at the center, at the railing, or near the far edge at the same moment. Each glance shifts perspective, creating the impression of multiple presences, all motionless, all watching. The bridge seems to amplify perception. Dim lights cast fractured shadows along the rails and decking. Every ripple of the water below reflects differently in the flickering bulbs. The structure itself appears longer than expected, stretching the journey across it, and the air carries a stillness that magnifies even the smallest sounds. Drivers describe an unusual heaviness. The vehicle feels pressed forward, as though some force encourages crossing faster than intended. Hands grip the wheel tighter. Breathing grows shallow. The figure remains fixed, yet attention is drawn repeatedly to it, pulling the mind into a focused unease that is difficult to escape. Shadows behave unnaturally. They stretch along the deck, twisting in ways that do not match light sources. Railings cast lines that bend toward the center of the bridge. Peripheral vision catches movement where none exists, shadows shifting even when the figure is stationary. Minutes feel elongated. The headlights sweep past the figure, yet it remains in the same location and in others. Mirrors reflect impossible duplicates, and the mind struggles to reconcile observation with reality. The stillness of the water below contrasts sharply with the tension in the air, reinforcing a sense that something is watching beyond sight. Some travelers hear faint sounds. Footsteps echo along the bridge, synchronized to the pace of the vehicle but coming from nowhere. A low hum may rise from the metal of the structure. Occasionally, a whisper drifts through the air, unintelligible, fleeting, yet distinctly human in tone. The bridge preserves memory. Each crossing leaves an impression. The figure may shift subtly with each vehicle, maintaining presence without motion. Light reflects differently, shadows respond to movement, and the air holds the weight of countless passings. Travelers contribute to this memory, and the bridge responds as if aware of every observer. Time seems distorted while crossing. What feels like minutes may be a few seconds, and seconds may stretch indefinitely. Observers sense the figure persistently. And the longer the gaze lingers, the more pronounced the multiplicity becomes. The flickering lights accentuate this effect, making the bridge feel simultaneously longer, darker, and narrower. The figure's presence is both distant and immediate. It is at the center, yet mirrors, headlights, and shadows create the perception of proximity. Attempts to approach or slow the vehicle heighten awareness of the figure. Its form remains undefined, pale and static, yet its presence dominates the perception of space across the bridge. Exiting the bridge does not erase the memory. As the vehicle reaches solid ground, the lights stabilize, shadows retreat, and the air returns to ordinary stillness. The lights stabilize, shadows retreat, and the air returns to ordinary stillness. And the air returns to ordinary stillness. Yet the image of the figure lingers, an imprint on the mind. Some report glimpses in mirrors even after leaving the crossing. Peripheral shadows continue to flicker in thought, and the sense of being observed persists beyond the bridge. And the sense of being observed persists beyond the bridge. Ghostlight crossing endures as a threshold. It is a place where perception is challenged, where a single figure can dominate the senses, and where shadows, reflections, and lights work together to create a moment suspended between reality and imagination. Drivers approach, traverse, and leave, yet the crossing remains a presence that waits for the next traveler. The bridge is ordinary in structure. Concrete and steel, railings and lights, yet it functions as more than infrastructure. It holds memory, observation, and a subtle influence over those who pass. Each journey adds to the rhythm of experience, reinforcing the mysterious presence at its center. Drivers approach, traverse, and leave, yet the crossing remains a presence that waits for the next traveler. Ghostlight crossing is a bridge between what is seen and what is felt. It is a place where lights flicker, shadows shift, and a figure stands both singular and multiplied. It transforms a simple crossing into a journey through perception, tension, and the uncanny. Every night, it waits, dimly illuminated, for the next traveler to experience the quiet dominion of the figure, the shadows, and the lingering memory of all who have crossed before. Black Mirror Bridge stretches across the river like a slab of obsidian, its surface smooth and reflective. At night, headlights scatter across the road, bouncing off the pavement and creating the illusion of glass. The reflections are unnerving, perfect and mirror-like, showing the sky, the beams of cars, and the surrounding landscape in uncanny clarity. But something is always off. Shadows move independently, sliding across the surface without connection to the objects casting them. Passengers notice it first in their peripheral vision. The reflection of another vehicle may lag slightly behind its movement, or a tree's shadow stretches and bends in ways that defy logic. Even the occupants of cars appear in the road's surface, but with subtle distortions. Drivers report catching a glimpse of their own reflection twisted in fear, a momentary image that vanishes if looked at directly. Cars sometimes stall without explanation. The engine dies suddenly, lights flicker, and electronics fail. Restarting may take minutes, even when mechanics later confirm no malfunction. The silence inside the cabin becomes oppressive, broken only by the steady hum of tires on asphalt and the distant echoes of the bridge itself. The reflective surface amplifies every sound, every creak, every movement, making the vehicle feel small and isolated. Travelers report an odd sense of time stretching while crossing. A span that should take minutes can feel much longer. The reflective surface, the distorted shadows, and the silent stretches of road produce a tension that is cumulative. Every glance at the mirrored asphalt heightens awareness, amplifying unease. The cumulative effect of these elements creates a sense of foreboding. The bridge itself seems alive to perception. Light bends in unnatural ways, and reflections do not always match the surroundings. A tree that appears at the side of the road may appear closer or farther in the reflection. Shadows move counter to movement. A pedestrian's reflection might appear before they step into view, then vanish as the figure emerges. These discrepancies are subtle at first, but for those traveling alone, they accumulate into a persistent sense that the environment is aware. The distortion of faces is especially disconcerting. Drivers see themselves, passengers, or even strangers reflected on the glass-like surface, contorted in ways impossible for reality to produce. Fear is imprinted on expressions. Eyes wide, lips twisted. A silent scream captured in the road. The images are fleeting yet vivid, leaving travelers unnerved long after the crossing. Some report that the reflections interact with their movements. Turning the head may cause the mirrored image to lag behind. Or a passenger leaning forward may see themselves still seated, staring back with a frozen expression. The reflections behave independently, observing, reacting, and existing outside the normal rules of space and time. The air over the bridge is dense and cool. Mist sometimes rises from the water beneath, adding a layer of opacity that softens the reflections yet amplifies the disorientation. Witnesses describe brief flickers of light in the reflections that have no source. Headlights may appear brighter in the mirror than in reality. Shapes flicker across the road like silhouettes of people walking, yet when the vehicle slows or stops, the figures are gone. Tires skid slightly on the reflective surface, though the road is dry and flat. The sensation is one of a bridge that exists in layers, one tangible and one perceptual, both intersecting and contradicting each other. Repeated crossings reinforce the pattern. The same distortions occur at similar points along the span. Faces appear with the same contorted expressions. Electronics fail intermittently. The consistency suggests that the bridge itself is an active participant in the experience, shaping perception and observation in ways that resist rational explanation. Despite the disorientation and the fear it produces, the bridge functions as a roadway. Vehicles cross safely, and structural inspections report no physical hazard. Yet those who travel at night do so with heightened attention. Drivers describe a tension that is constant, a sensation that the bridge watches, and that the reflective surface is aware of every movement. Observers note that the reflective surface seems to extend the bridge. Distances feel longer, curves appear sharper, and depth is distorted. Shadows drift across lanes in ways that cannot be accounted for. The cumulative effect is immersive, a controlled unease that grows as the vehicle progresses. Passengers carry the memory of the crossing. Reflection of their own faces contorted in fear. Lingers in thought. The knowledge that shadows move independently. That radios can fail or emit static without cause. That vehicles stall without explanation. Leaves a lasting impression. Black Mirror Bridge endures as a place where perception diverges from reality. Its mirrored surface captures the ordinary and renders it strange. Shadows move independently, faces contort with impossible emotion, and vehicles experience unexplainable interference. The crossing is safe in the physical sense, yet every night it transforms into a corridor of uncertainty. A passage where reflection and observation blend, leaving travelers aware that the bridge itself is alive in perception. Waiting for the next crossing to begin. Creeping fog span stretches across a low, winding river, its lanes disappearing into the night when fog rolls in. The mist is dense, thick, and slow-moving, hugging the asphalt and swallowing tail lights almost immediately. Drivers notice it first as a pale curtain rising from the water, coiling along the edges of the bridge, and creeping silently toward every vehicle. The fog moves deliberately, as if it has purpose. Headlights cut narrow beams into the white-gray wall, illuminating nothing beyond a few feet. The air grows damp and cold. Visibility drops to almost nothing, and familiar markers along the lanes vanish into the mist. The usual sound of the bridgea, the hum of tires over steel grates, the rush of water below becomes muted, replaced by a heavy silence that feels almost physical. Drivers report a presence behind them. It is not visible, yet it exerts a sensation of pressure, keeping pace with their speed. The feeling is subtle at first, like a shadow brushing the back of the neck, but grows increasingly oppressive the longer they remain on the span. Some describe the impression of being pushed forward or guided, the fog responding directly to their motion. Tires squeal without provocation. The sound is sharp and sudden, echoing across lanes that are otherwise empty. No curves, no braking, no other vehicles account for the noise. The sound is accompanied by a faint vibration through the vehicle, enough to make drivers glance quickly at mirrors or over shoulders. Yet nothing appears. The road is empty, the lanes open, and the fog remains the only visible presence. The bridge itself seems altered in these moments. Lanes stretch and compress, steel barriers appear closer than they should, and the edges of the roadway blur. Trees or structures at the approach fade into the fog entirely. Depth perception becomes unreliable, leaving drivers uncertain of distance and speed. Headlights penetrate the mist only partially, creating shadows that shift in ways that seem deliberate rather than random. Movement through the fog is disorienting. Even steady driving produces a sense of altered pace, as if the bridge stretches beneath the tires. Passing markers, signs, or lines on the road feel delayed, appearing moments after expected. Drivers report a heightened sense of awareness, their focus drawn outward while peripheral vision catches glimpses of shifting shapes that vanish when observed directly. Mirrors produce strange reflections. Objects behind the vehicle appear closer. Sometimes showing vague shapes that fade the moment the driver glances. Occasionally, a figure seems to pace alongside the car. Perfectly synchronized with speed, yet no vehicle, pedestrian, or obstruction is visible. The effect is consistent, producing the impression of a silent companion moving with the car through the fog. The fog itself responds to attention. Drivers who maintain steady speed notice that the wall of mist seems to follow more closely. Attempts to accelerate produce no change in perception of density. Slowing briefly may create the sensation of the fog closing in, pressing against the vehicle from all sides. The environment becomes simultaneously alive and indifferent, responsive in ways that defy explanation. Sounds behave unusually. Engine hums may distort. Tires squeal when no cause exists. Distant water or structures appear to echo in non-standard rhythms. Footsteps or tapping sounds are reported inside the vehicle or near the side mirrors, indistinct and fleeting. The combination heightens tension, making the ordinary act of crossing the bridge feel uncanny and demanding of constant attention. The experience is not overtly threatening, yet persistent. The fog, the pressure, the noise, and shifting reflections create a subtle psychological weight. Drivers often report relief when the span ends, yet a lingering sense of observation remains. The bridge appears ordinary in daylight, yet night crossings during dense fog produce moments that linger in memory, vivid and disorienting. Some travelers attempt to record the phenomenon. Cameras and audio equipment capture static, faint shadows, and occasional distortions, but rarely match the lived experience. The discrepancy reinforces the subjective yet undeniable nature of the events, leaving those who witness them convinced of their reality despite limited documentation. Time feels altered on creeping fog span. Drivers report that slowing down intensifies both pressure and awareness, while speeding produces a sense of racing against the mist itself. The environment creates a rhythm separate from reality, a subtle manipulation of perception that persists for the duration of the crossing. When vehicles exit the fog, the road appears normal, clear, and familiar. Markers and lights re-emerge. The river below reflects moonlight without distortion. Yet the memory of presence, pressure, and strange sound remains. Drivers report lingering tension, heightened awareness, and a persistent sensation of being followed long after leaving the bridge. The fog moves deliberately, swallowing tail lights and stretching lanes. Tires squeal without cause. Reflections and shapes persist just beyond clarity, keeping drivers attentive and cautious. But at night it becomes a liminal space, alive with observation, responsive to motion, and impossible to ignore. Every night, vehicles traverse the span, unaware of the subtle manipulation of perception beneath the dense mist. Those who cross carefully remember the fog, the pressure, and the strange sounds. Creeping fog span is not empty. It preserves the bridge as a place where reality bends, perception stretches, and the ordinary act of driving becomes an encounter with the uncanny. Shiver Point Bridge stretches across a narrow river, connecting two quiet stretches of highway. By day, it appears ordinary. Vehicles glide steadily across the asphalt. The steel railings glint in sunlight. Water flows beneath without disturbance. Travelers pass without pause, unaware of the sensations that await after nightfall. At night, everything changes. As soon as a vehicle enters the bridge, a sudden cold spreads through the cabin. The temperature drops noticeably, penetrating clothing, chilling skin. Drivers and passengers alike feel it, a cold that seems alive, pressing against them without wind or draft. Shadows appear along the edges of the bridge. The effect is immediate, and it persists while crossing the span. They are subtle at first, crawling along the guardrails and asphalt. As headlights illuminate the lanes, the shadows become more defined, moving independently of vehicles. They stretch, crawl, and shift, maintaining a slow, deliberate pace alongside cars. Attempting to focus directly on them causes them to vanish, yet they reappear as if following observation. Whispering accompanies the shadows. Soft voices emerge, barely audible over the hum of engines. Travelers often recognize the tones, familiar and unsettling. The whispers carry names or phrases, sounding like relatives long dead, though no one is near. The bridge itself seems to stretch. Distances feel longer than expected. Lane markers appear further apart. The far end seems to recede as vehicles approach, altering perception. The river below reflects muted light, distorted and uneven, enhancing the disorientation. Sounds behave strangely. Wind carries murmurs from the edges of the bridge, but they seem layered, echoing voices that arrive out of sequence. Tires on steel expansion joints produce vibrations that echo unnaturally. Water beneath the bridge ripples even without wind. The combination creates a sensory experience that feels deliberate, as if the bridge itself reacts to presence. Travelers report physical sensations. Hands and arms feel a light pressure, brushing against the body as if something unseen moves alongside. Seats may shift slightly, blankets or coats feel disturbed, but nothing is visibly touched. The cold penetrates rapidly, yet localized, sometimes moving in waves across the cabin. Some describe a tingling sensation on the scalp or neck, fleeting but vivid. Shadow movement is persistent. The figures do not cross into the path of vehicles. They remain along the edges, crawling along lines of light and dark. Their motion is synchronized with speed, maintaining pace without ever overtaking. The effect is disorienting, giving the sense of being followed without direct interaction. Voices continue to speak in patterns. They call out names, utter phrases, sometimes repeating the same sound over and over. Travelers often pause, unsure if they are imagining or recognizing, yet the experience is tangible. The whispers persist even when vehicles accelerate or decelerate, as if they exist independently of motion. Perception of time is altered. The span of the bridge feels longer than measured. Drivers feel as if they have traveled farther than they should have. Minutes stretch while headlights sweep over lanes. Shadows appear and vanish in cycles, repeating patterns that reinforce the sensation that the crossing is alive. Attempts to record the phenomena yield inconsistent results. Cameras and audio devices often capture only the road and water. Shadows may appear briefly as faint blurs. Audio may pick up hums or static, but the whispers are rarely captured with clarity. Sensors measuring temperature note rapid localized drops, but no mechanical explanation accounts for the timing. The bridge functions in ordinary terms by day. Vehicles cross safely. The river flows beneath. Shadows retreat, cold dissipates, and the stretch appears finite and familiar. Travelers moving at midday experience no sensation of presence, crawling shadows, or whispering voices. At night, Shiver Point Bridge becomes a threshold. The combination of cold, shadows, and whispers creates an experience of observation and interaction that is subtle, pervasive, and persistent. Drivers feel watched, passengers feel pressure, and the environment seems aware of every movement and thought. Travelers who cross repeatedly report similar experiences. The cold, the crawling shadows, and the familiar whispers recur consistently. Each night's crossing reinforces the sense that the bridge is not merely a structure, but a presence, recording, observing, and influencing perception. Shiver Point Bridge endures as both passage and phenomenon. It allows safe travel, yet it engages with every occupant in ways that cannot be measured completely. Shadows maintain pace, voices echo across lanes, and cold presses against travelers without warning. Those who leave the bridge carry memory. The experience lingers, vivid and unsettling. It is not explained by logic. Yet the sensations remain, imprinting awareness of a crossing that is ordinary by day, alive and attentive by night. A place where shadows crawl, whispers speak, and cold moves with intention. It is not visible in daylight. It is not explained by logic. Yet the sensations remain, imprinting awareness of a crossing that is ordinary by day, alive and attentive by night, a place where shadows crawl, whispers speak, and cold moves with intention. Bloodstone Crossing spans a narrow river, its structure old but sturdy, built of weathered wood and stone that has endured countless years of flood and frost. By day, the bridge appears ordinary, solid beneath tires, familiar to travelers who pass over it on routine journeys. But when night falls, the river and the stones beneath the bridge transform, taking on a presence that is impossible to ignore. Under the moonlight, the stones seem to glow faintly, tinted crimson as if reflecting some unseen current beneath the water. The red is subtle at first, a hue that dances across uneven surfaces, yet it grows more vivid with each step of the tires across the planks. Observers describe the color as unnatural, too deep and resonant to be a simple reflection of the moon. It lingers in peripheral vision, as if drawing attention to every ripple in the water and every shadow cast by the railing. Figures appear along the railings. They kneel silently, facing the water, heads bowed or hands pressed to the planks. Heads bowed or hands pressed to the planks. When a vehicle approaches, the figures vanish immediately, dissolving into the darkness as if they had never existed. Passengers often glimpse them only briefly. A flicker at the edge of vision. Yet the impression is vivid. A certainty that something was there. The more one looks, the more aware they become of the void left behind. The absence shaped as presence. Inside the vehicles, the unnerving effect continues. Windows that are locked and sealed sometimes appear to hold eyes pressed against them. The eyes stare from outside, observing, yet no one is there when the windows are examined. Drivers and passengers report a shiver, a sudden tension in the chest, a feeling that the air itself is heavier, as if charged with the awareness of unseen watchers. The sensation persists as long as the bridge is crossed, fading only after leaving the structure behind. The bridge creaks in normal fashion, settling with the weight of traffic. Yet every sound is magnified at night. Tires rolling over planks, the wind shifting across the water, distant repless of the ordinary becomes uncanny. Travelers describe the echoes of footsteps that do not belong to any vehicle, movements along the wood that seem coordinated with the kneeling figures outside. Each vibration, each creak, heightens the sense of presence that is impossible to ignore. Bloodstone Crossing has long been a subject of local lore. Residents speak cautiously of the crimson stones, the silent figures, and the eyes at the windows. Warnings are passed along to travelers: cross the bridge quickly, keep attention on the road, and do not linger in the headlights for too long. Despite cautionary tales, many are drawn by curiosity, unaware of how deeply perception can be affected by the interplay of moonlight, shadow, and silence. The red reflections intensify in still water. Even small ripples seem to carry an unnatural weight, moving slowly as though time itself bends over the river. Drivers report the sensation of the bridge stretching, lanes elongating subtly, shadows converging under the crimson glow. The effect is cumulative, building tension with each passing moment until awareness is heightened to an almost unbearable level. Figures reappear in unpredictable locations, never in the same pattern, kneeling along the railing, vanishing when approached, leaving empty space and an impression of deliberate observation. The rhythm of their appearances does not correspond to passing vehicles, to traffic, or to the natural movement of the wind or water. They are autonomous, enigmatic, and inescapable for those who notice them. Inside cars, the feeling of being watched intensifies. Eyes appear at locked windows, faces pressed close, expressions unreadable but unmistakable. The pressure behind the eyes and in the chest increases, prompting drivers to keep focus on the road. The sensations persist even when headlights illuminate empty lanes, reinforcing the uncanny reality that the phenomenon is neither illusion nor coincidence. Attempts to record the figures or reflections yield no evidence. Cameras capture only the ordinary bridge, asphalt, planks, and river beneath. The red reflection on the stones appears muted or absent on recordings. Audio equipment detects normal environmental sounds but never the footsteps, the whispers, or the subtle movements reported by passengers. Only human perception registers the events fully. Despite unease, travelers continue to cross the bridge. Each night, the crimson stones, the kneeling figures, and the pressed eyes create an immersive experience that lingers in memory. The bridge functions as infrastructure, yet simultaneously as a threshold into the extraordinary. Passengers leave with the sensation of having traversed not only a river, but an altered perception, a space where awareness, reflection, and the unseen converge. Bloodstone Crossing remains unchanged, enduring floods, seasons, and routine travel. Yet it continues to affect all who cross after dark. The stones glow, figures kneel and vanish, and eyes press against sealed glass, creating a corridor where ordinary observation is intertwined with the presence of something beyond explanation. Each journey becomes a meditation on perception, presence, and the interplay of shadow and light, leaving travelers forever aware that the bridge holds more than simple stone and water. Phantom River Bridge stretches across a wide, mist-covered river, isolated from any nearby roads or settlements. Its span is long and narrow, flanked by guardrails that vanish into the fog. Drivers approaching notice the air grow cooler, heavier, as if the bridge itself exhales a slow, deliberate breath. The mist clings to the bridge. It rises from the river below, curling along the edges, obscuring lanes, and softening the reflection of lights on the wet surface. The water is nearly silent, absorbing sound and creating an eerie quiet that contrasts with the movement above. The fog makes distance deceptive, and every familiar measure of space feels unreliable. At first, they are indistinct shapes, barely visible in peripheral vision. As drivers move forward, the figures become clearer, walking steadily along the asphalt. Some travelers report seeing multiple figures, mirroring the car's path across the length of the bridge. The figures do not interact directly. They do not speak, gesture, or respond to light. Their presence is silent but insistent, creating a sense of being accompanied by unseen company. Each movement is deliberate, patterned, and synchronized with the car, making it impossible to ignore their presence. The bridge carries sound in unusual ways. Some drivers hear the dragging of chains across the asphalt, slow and uneven, as though footsteps are tethered to weight. The sound travels unnaturally far, echoing along guardrails and under the fog, giving the impression of movement beyond the figures themselves. Occasionally, whispers reach the ears, unintelligible at first, then forming phrases that seem to promise the traveler will never leave. The words are soft but insistent, carried by the mist and amplified in the quiet. The effect on perception is profound. Time stretches along the bridge. A crossing that should take minutes feels extended. The fog and figures altering awareness. Shadows twist and lengthen. Headlights illuminate shapes that vanish instantly when directly observed, leaving only the sense that movement has occurred. Drivers find it difficult to judge distance or speed accurately, as the bridge seems to bend reality subtly. Eyes perceive detail that may not exist. The fog, the figures, the bridge, all blending together in an existential crisis. Figures appear in reflections on wet asphalt, in mirrors, and along guardrails. Each glance seems to multiply them, as if the bridge itself can replicate presence. Shadows crawl along lines of the bridge, following the vehicle, stretching across lanes, and retreating into the mist when approached. The bridge seems alive with memory. Every vehicle passing through adds to its rhythm. Footsteps and chains echo long after tires roll past. The mist carries remnants of previous crossings, blending past and present. Drivers often feel a continuity, as if those who came before still move along lanes unseen, watching and guiding the flow of passage. The atmosphere creates tension without violence. There is no direct threat from the figures, the whispers, or the sound of chains. The bridge exerts influence subtly, shaping movement, altering perception, and imposing a quiet pressure. Hands grip steering wheels tighter. Eyes scan the fog continuously. Breathing becomes shallow as the mind struggles to reconcile observation with reality. The midpoint of the bridge feels heavier. Shadows become denser. Figures appear closer, synchronized with every curve and slight adjustment of the vehicle. The dragging of chains grows more pronounced. Whispers intensify, rising and falling as if carried along a rhythm unique to the bridge. Travelers sense that stopping is impossible, that the bridge insists on motion forward. Crossing the bridge alters awareness. Peripheral vision dominates experience. Sounds arrive out of sequence. The fog obscures endpoints and the river below. Drivers may feel as if they are moving slower than they are, yet the shadows maintain perfect alignment, reinforcing the impossibility of escape. Exiting the bridge offers relief, but not release. Chains dragging fade into silence. Whispers vanish with distance. The water below absorbs the echoes. And the air grows lighter. Yet the impression remains in the mind. Travelers recall every movement, every shadow, every whisper. As though the bridge itself has imprinted memory into their awareness. Phantom River Bridge endures as a liminal space. It is ordinary in construction yet extraordinary in effect. Concrete, asphalt, and guardrails anchor it physically. While fog, shadows, and sound manipulate perception. Each vehicle a new participant in its subtle choreography. The bridge waits patiently for the next traveler. Mist curls along the lanes. Shadows stretch in corners of vision. Chains scrape lightly across the asphalt. Whispers rise softly and then fade. Figures walk alongside, mirroring motion, observing silently. The bridge continues, isolated and unchanging. Yet alive with the experience of every crossing. Ensuring that Phantom River Bridge remains a place where passage is both journey and encounter with the unknown. Thank you for crossing these haunted border bridges with me tonight. The bridges are more than structures. They are thresholds between the living and the unknown. Shadows linger long after cars leave, and some travelers are never truly free. If you ever drive across a bridge at midnight, pay attention to reflections, fog, and the shapes moving just beyond your headlights. The shadows might be following you more closely than you think. Would you dare to cross one of these haunted bridges alone, or would you turn your car around and never look back? Rest well, my friend. Until our next journey into the unknown.